Final peeps, are you ready for a showdown?
A top 5 showdown. Now we have done a ranked shows, so we're going to rank in a much shorter package. We're going to rank Metallica's top 5 studio albums, and before we get started on that, what do we want to tell these folks to do, John?
Subscribe.
Yep.
Like, the little thumbs up.
Communicate with us. Go to the YouTube channel. Go to all our social media. Tell us what you want to hear, what you want to see, top 5 ideas, show ideas, all of it. You can do that, and we would love it if you did. Now, anything else before we get started here, John?
Comment. Even if it's wacky,
Yeah.
comment.
Yeah, bad comments, good comments, all of them. We like the interaction. All right, so I have a comment. I think
We're going to get right into this Metallica ranking.
we're not messing around. Geez.
Well,
now I am messing around now. I personally feel like this is number 5. I know it's a huge album. It's like sold 30 or 40 million copies since 1991. This is where Metallica started to lose me. You may feel, how do you feel about?
I feel entirely different because this is where Metallica brought me in.
Of course it is.
I mean, I like the other stuff, but this was my entry point.
This is, to be completely honest, this is more mass appeal than any of the previous albums, any of the previous studio albums. There's no doubt about that. Enter Sandman was kind of that song that was somewhere between pop and hard rock and metal.
Yeah.
They moved to Bob Rock as the producer on this, who had done Motley Crue's Dr. Feelgood, which I think Lars Ulrich wanted him on this because of the way that the drums sounded on Dr. Feelgood, by the way. Little nugget. But I don't know, man. I have a 5 and a 4 in mind. Let me just tell you what I think is the next one. I feel like it's And Justice for All, which most people consider Metallica's like prog album. Not necessarily thrash, not metal, not pop, but more prog. Longer songs, more movements within the songs and stuff.
The only reason I would drop this one down to 5 is because they didn't push the ball forward.
Yeah.
This is Metallica just being the same band they were on the earlier albums.
With longer songs.
Yeah, with longer songs. And I feel like the Black Album, or whatever you want to call it, Metallica, is where they really became a huge international rock band.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a fan of the Black Album. They sucked me in before that one.
Yeah.
So thus my issue with the Black Album. But okay. So if we're going to say that, we'll say, I can't count to 5. So we're going to say, And Justice for All, number 5.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like that.
I can handle that. In that case, there is no doubt that the Black Album is number 4. You sold millions and millions of copies, brought new fans in, really brought a lot of people from that rock and pop world into that harder side of the rock, pop, metal area. And it just kind of became sort of a stew that everybody kind of floated around in. Now there's a bunch of bands kind of like that, but Metallica was kind of the original.
Yeah, and when they had a DVD-ROM out of this tour, which was amazing. You could switch cameras and switch your own show.
Oh, did they really?
It was really super cool.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, so, and this is my Walmart edition of this. I have not opened this one yet. Oh. It's on black vinyl. I think, John, that the first album, Kill 'Em All, would be number 3.
I'm okay with that.
It's so funny that when we listened to this music, when we first heard it, it sounded like nothing you've ever heard before. They took that new wave of British heavy metal influence and turned it into this thrash, fast-moving, very fast guitar parts, and turned it into something of their own. And there aren't a lot of bands that do that kind of thing. I'm not saying they're on the same level as the Beatles, but they broke a lot of ground just doing what they did. This album is fantastic. I love it, but not as much as the other two.
Yeah, it's a little raw and unhinged. It's really them figuring out where they're going to be. And there were a lot of other bands in Southern California kind of doing the same thing. Yeah. I mean, they were building a community of this thrash metal.
Yeah, kind of like the punk movement.
Yeah.
But with thrash.
Yeah.
And it definitely gave birth to a lot of different bands and music and subgenres and things like that. So we're okay with this as number 3.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Well, my number 2 then would be Ride the Lightning.
Ride the Lightning.
This album cover looks like the music sounds to me.
Oh, yeah.
I love the way the cover looks. This album, there's not a song on this album I don't like. This is kind of where you can feel the band getting their footing. You can feel that confidence building, that, you know, maybe they were stepping into a place where nobody had been before, but now they're starting to, you know, really stomp through it.
Yeah. And this is where their logo kind of became the logo.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you started to see the t-shirts and all of that stuff. And I mean, by Decibel Magazine, this is the number 1 thrash metal album of all time. But to me, in the top 5, this is number 2. To me, I think that the number 1 thrash metal and the number 1 Metallica album of all time is Master of Puppets. This is where they like sucked me in. You hear it for the first time with the first album. The second album comes out. It's not much the same, but it's moving in the same direction. This record, 1986, this is really what sold me on the idea of Metallica. And probably opened my little, 12-year-old mind to the idea of that harder, that more metal, thrashy sounding music.
Yeah, and interesting, they were not really, just because I was into such different music at the time, they were not on my radar as a band to listen to.
Well, you were heavy into the post-punk stuff.
Yeah.
It was the early to mid 80s. There were other like movements of types of music going on.
And metal was kind of like, I mean, I wasn't even into Led Zeppelin at the time that much.
Because it was too commercial, right?
Yeah.
Well, these guys at the time were not too commercial. No. They've gone around the horn and they've sold like 123 million albums, 63 million in the US and like 57 million since 1991. And
at the time, in the 80s, there was no way to they weren't getting a lot of airplay.
Right. They didn't do that until And Justice for All with One. But then, they resisted that image first kind of thing that the MTV ethos required of all these bands. And it's kind of funny, you think about it now, MTV doesn't exist. Radio practically doesn't exist. But back then, bands...
But Metallica exists.
Yes. It's outlived all of that. They didn't want either of those, and they're the one still standing.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So you're cool with this at number 1?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. That was always going to be my number 1.
Okay. So in that case, we've got And Justice for All, we've got the Black Album, we've got Kill 'Em All, Ride the Lightning, and number 1 is Master of Puppets. And, they have 6 other studio albums that didn't even occur to me to be in the top 5.
No, they really, I think, the top 5 we picked, you may shuffle the order a little bit, but those are the top 5.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's fun distilling a band's entire career down into, like 10, 15 minutes, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not easy to do either because, we had a little discussion beforehand about this and but we were on the same page. But we want to know what you guys think about other top 5s that we should do. Like we said at the top of this, go to our social media, go to YouTube, go to YouTube Music, look at our YouTube channel and the whole smorgasbord of video treats that Jacob Hansen and Keith Toombs have helped us put together on there. Anything else, John?
That's Metallica.
That's Metallica's Top 5. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you all the next time around.